Imagine you were playing with a friend a simple game of heads and tails, and they threw up that coin, they called tails, and they put it down, and indeed, it was tails. And he said, try it again. They threw it up in the air, they called tails once again, they put it down, and again, it was tails. You're beginning to get suspicious. They do it a third time, once again. They call tails and they put it down, and it is tails. My guess is after 3, 4, or 5 times, you're going to think that the fix is on. There's something over here. This cannot be a coincidence. Is it a double-sided coin? Is there a particular way that they're throwing it up? I don't know, but it cannot be random. It cannot be a coincidence. Friends, that is the way we Jews look at Jewish history. And if there's one holiday that highlights that message, it is none other than Purim. On Purim, when we read the Megillah, we will say the bracha, She'asa nisim lavoiseino bayamim hahem bizman hazeh. Thank you, Hashem, for performing miracles for us back in those days and today. Now, as many of you know, this blessing is also said on Hanukkah. Now, on Hanukkah, we understand it is a season of miracles. After all, a small Jewish army defeated a big, vast Greek army. A small thing of oil lasted for 8 days. Supernatural miracles. And when you read the story of Esther, when you read the Megillah, there isn't one part that breaks any natural law. Of course, the Jewish people are saved through the efforts of Mordechai and Esther. But when you read the story, there isn't that one event that jumps out at you as, oh my gosh, especially as the events were unfolding, not quickly, 10 chapters in a half an hour like we read the Megillah, but over a decade. Yes, the entire story took over a decade. I'm sure that as those events unfolded, people didn't sense where things were happening, why they were happening. But now as we look back at the story, one must be blind not to recognize that Hashem was there every step of the way, that Hashem orchestrated that the right people be in the right place at the right time, like a game of chess in which you are always 1 or 2 steps ahead. Hashem is making sure that prior to Haman making the decree, Esther's chosen as queen. That Mordechai happens to overhear a plot. That at the moment Haman wants to hang Mordechai, the king cannot fall asleep. Time and time again in that story, there's an event, maybe not supernatural, but it's like that flip of the coin. And time again, that right character is in the right place. And when you see a movie, you know that this wasn't random. There was a director. There was someone that made sure all the characters, all the actors were doing their part. This plot wasn't random. When we read the book of the Megillah, we also recognize that Hashem was there, perhaps in a more hidden way than in the story of Hanukkah. But they're exactly the same. God's name, therefore, may not be in the book, but God is present. God is there, and it is no less a miracle than Hanukkah. I often feel that if we had to take the entire Jewish history and divide it into 2 eras, we would, in a sense, have kind of the biblical time, and they would have the post-biblical time. Where exactly would that halfway point be? And perhaps you can even say it was Purim. Because here they were entering that second era of history. There may not have been a revealed miracle. There may not have been a prophet telling them why this was happening to them. They may have had to come to use their own seichel, their own intelligence, and figure out a way out. And yet, Hashem was with them every step of the way. And perhaps one could say what Pesach is to the first era in history, Purim is to the second era in history. It is for us today such a meaningful yontif because it is a template for what it means to be a Jew. To recognize that Hashem is there in our life, orchestrating all events. And it's not coincidental that so many of the traditions of Purim have to do with something concealed. The Hamantash has that filling tucked and barely peeking out. God's name is not in the Megillah, and yet you can see Hashem there. We disguise ourselves on Purim in costume. The message is that even though there is concealment, God is there, God is present. And perhaps the greatest miracle of all is the survival of the Jewish people. Am Yisrael Chai. How many times throughout Jewish history was our survival not a given? Imagine it was that coin. Are we going to make it past the slavery in Egypt? Are we going to make it past the Babylonian exile, or the Roman exile, or the Hanukkah story? Or are we going to survive past the Crusades, the pogroms? Are we going to be able to rebuild after the Holocaust? And yet here we are today saying Am Yisrael Chai, because there is a director, there is a God that protects us, that has a purpose for our people. This is why Purim to me is such a meaningful yontiv, because it represents this second type of miracle, one that is so present in our lives up until today. And if all of us look at our lives, we will be able to say, She'asa nisim lavosenu bayamim hahem bizman hazeh. Miracles are happening today as well. My life is not a coincidence. Just like the book of Esther, just like if a coin is flipped time and time again, and it does land on the same side, it means there's a fix. It's a double-sided coin. In our lives as well, there is that director ensuring that we are where we need to be to do our mission as proud Jews. Happy Purim.